Welcome back to the third hour of our program. On the line with us is Scott Hayes. Scott is the secretary of the Clackamas County Democratic Party. Clackamas County just down the road from us here in Portland, Multnomah County. Clackamas County Dems, C-L-A-C-K-A-M-A-S is how it's spelled. ClackamasDems.org is the website. And also Clackamas Dems is the Twitter handle. And Scott, welcome to the program. I wanted you to, you and I had a conversation over the weekend. I wanted you to share with our listeners, how you got into being active in the Clackamas County Democratic Party, how, what this party has done, how it's just an extraordinary number of people who are involved, and how people who are listening might use the lessons of your experience to become activists in their own local Democratic Party. I realize there are variations, all around the country from state to state and all that kind of stuff, but I think there's some general principles at work here that you can illustrate really well.
Thank you, Tom. I became involved with the Democratic Party in Clackamas County largely because of your show. That was back in the day when you and Bernie had your brunch with Bernie. And not only did he excite and energize me, but you always ended your show, and you still do, with the principle that you need to be involved, and tag you're it is kind of what you always said. So I took you at your word, and I became an appointed PCP in Clackamas County, a precinct committee person. And when the next primary election came around, I was an elected PCP. And then come November, when our party reorganizes itself, I ran for secretary and became the elected secretary of the party. So that's kind of how I got involved. I got involved because I wanted to support Bernie's campaign, but I wanted to do it within the Democratic Party, and I wanted to be active and engaged in the party.
So how many precinct committee persons does the Clackamas County Democratic Party have, and how do you get involved?
We currently, as secretary, I keep an accurate count of our precinct committee persons. We have 362 precinct committee persons that make up our central committee. And right now, the first way to become a precinct committee person is to run for office in the primary election. So it'll be 2 years again before people can run for the position. And they are elected generally within their House district. But in the meantime, anyone who is a registered Democrat and has been a registered Democrat for 180 days can apply to become appointed as a PCP. And it's actually, we welcome volunteers. So anybody who applies generally is accepted by the
That's how you first got in, right?
I was first appointed. That's correct. I applied and went through the appointment process. It's pretty much automatic. Every once in a while, I suppose we could reject a person for one reason or another. But in my 6 years as secretary, we never have. Mm-hmm. So that's the easy way. And to do that, they would send an email to me, and I could forward, or they could go to the website that you just cited, the clackamasdems.org website, and there's an application form there. And it comes to me, and I just verify their registration information and forward it first to our executive committee and then to our central committee, who makes the final decision.
So being a precinct committee person and being a member of the central committee of a local Democratic Party, what do you do? What's involved? How much time does it take, and what kind of power do you have in terms of influencing the future of the Democratic Party and the selection of candidates and primaries and things like that?
It's a complex question. It really boils down to how much time you want to put in. We have PCPs who don't do anything, but then we have some that are extremely active and put their fingers into every little thing that they can put their hands into. Essentially, you just kind of pick and choose the types of things that you want to do. We have several programs that we operate that precinct committee persons can participate in. But primarily, they are the voting members of the central committee. So any decision that our county party makes is made by a majority vote of the PCPs who attend the meeting where the decisions are being made. Another function is we recently have a woman who has resigned her seat in the state House of Representatives. And depending upon what precincts are involved in that, precinct committee persons are the ones who make the initial decision as to who will be forwarded to the county commissions that are in that House district and they are the ones who make the final decision. But it was the PCPs who meet and decide who they are going to nominate to be appointed. So that's a special privilege that PCPs have to help select who is going to replace somebody who resigns or gives up their seat.
What about how to, the getting people onto the primary? I know in some states it has to go through the precinct committee people. In other states, it's just basically wide open to whoever gets the most votes. How does it work here in Oregon?
In Oregon, you file and run in a primary. If you are a Democrat, we will support you. That's it. Right. It's essentially that simple. Sometimes, well, that's another story. There's one other program though that I could mention real quick, and that's our neighborhood leader program.
Sure.
And you don't necessarily have to be a PCP. Anybody who's a Democrat and wants to participate can participate in it. We currently have about 500 neighborhood leaders in our county, and we are the largest neighborhood leader program in the state. What a neighborhood leader does is they agree to go to about 40 households in their immediate neighborhood at election time, and they make 2 visits to the household and speak with and interact directly with face-to-face with Democratic voters. And the idea is to share with them our views, our recommendations for elections, and to talk about the issues. Unlike regular campaigning, who goes door to door, when the election is over, they go home. But our neighborhood leaders live in the neighborhood and they stay. And the following election cycle, they'll go back to the same households. And over time, we find that they start building relationships with the people they're talking to and establish, probably more importantly, trust. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you that in our neighborhood leader program, where we are active, we have increased voter turnout by about 35% of what happens in Oregon. And in our really intensive neighborhoods where people have been doing it for some time and are very active, we sometimes have voter turnout in a neighborhood, in a turf, what we call a turf, that's the neighborhood, of 85% or higher. And that's primarily upon face-to-face contact. We can leave literature on doors, we can call people, and that's effective, but it's not as effective as your neighbor talking to you at the door, handing you a piece of literature or several pieces of literature and talking to you about the campaign and who's running, what the issues are.
So across the country, if somebody listening right now or watching our program right now wanted to become more involved in the Democratic Party and follow we're talking with Scott Hayes. He's the secretary of the Clackamas County Democratic Party here in Oregon. If somebody was watching in any other random state, what's your advice to them about how to get involved? Where do they start? Whose door do they knock on? What phone call should they make? How do they find their way into the party?
Most county parties, and you want to start locally, obviously, but most county parties have a website and they have some method by, like I just described, that will allow a person to gain access and go to a meeting and see what it's like, see if the shoe fits, if they like it. Applying to become a precinct committee person would be the first step. Although you don't have to be a PCP, there are oftentimes just many opportunities to volunteer. So there are, right now, our county fair is just starting up in Canby, Oregon. And we have a table there and we are registering voters. We are getting people to sign up to become PCPs or to become neighborhood leaders. We are interacting with people as they pass by. Of course, some of those interactions at the county fair, as you might imagine, are not quite as friendly, but that's the price you pay for putting yourself out in the public. But in any Democratic Party across the country, nobody's going to come to you, and if they do, then you join. It's really quite simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just a very straightforward process.
Can I speak about one other thing that we're doing?
Please, by all means.
We have like a lot of parties across the country. We support any Democratic candidate who's running for office. We're trying to get them elected, and that's at the federal, the state, and at the local level. At the local level, sometimes that's where we struggle the most, because as it turns out, the way most ballots are constructed, at the top of the ballot on the first page, we have the federal or the high state officials, and then it goes down kind of in a hierarchy down to the lower officials, including judges, and then county offices and city councils and things like that. Those positions are usually at the end of the ballot. And what we are discovering is that a lot of people do not go all the way through the ballot. They vote only for the top stuff at the front, and they stop when they get to the judges.
Right.
For example, in our last 2 elections here in Clackamas County, we had as many as 65,000 to 70,000 people who voted at the top of the ballot, but did not go all the way through and didn't vote at the bottom.
Whoa.
We figure if we can motivate and rally anywhere from 5,000 to 6,000 more people to go all the way down the ballot, and most of those races, by the way, for county commission and for city councils are close. They're close elections.
Mm-hmm.
Get 5,000 or 6,000 more people to go down the ballot, the odds are that we're going to win those elections. So we're trying to come up with ways to motivate people to go out and vote. And what we're trying to do right now is we are taking, I hate to say this, we're taking a Republican idea and kind of standing it on its head. I know you remember, and maybe other people remember, in the last couple of years, Republicans have taken national cultural war issues and used them to divide, to get people to hate and dislike and mistrust. And they've taken them to city councils and to school boards to argue about cultural war issues like mask mandates, the teaching of history, the treatment of transgender and LGBTQ people. And they come in and they yell and they scream and they shout and they try to bully their way to get things done the way they want. And they're also soliciting news, right? That's always newsmaking.
Right.
What we're going to do, our county has adopted 2 resolutions that are national in origin, but we're applying them at the local level. One is on abortion, and essentially what we're trying to do is encourage local jurisdictions and the state to protect women who come to the state for an abortion, to protect them from states out.
And the second one is, I'm sorry, we just have 10 seconds, Scott, before we hit a break here.
And the second one is a climate change.
Cool.
And we are going to local jurisdictions, and we're trying to get into the news cycle and make the news cycle take those important issues so that we'll vote down ballot. They want to vote against Republicans who will not take a stand.
That is great. That is great. Scott Hayes is the secretary of the Clackamas County Democratic Party. ClackamasDems.org. Clackamas Dems on Twitter. Scott, thanks a lot for dropping by today.